All right. Good morning, good morning, good morning, everybody, and welcome to our show, Love Beyond the Walls Live. I am your host, Nicole Ray, and I am very excited to be with you on today. Look, before we even get started, I want to ask you right now, you're on Facebook, you're on YouTube, wherever you are watching from, I want you to go and I want you to like and I want you to share the broadcast, okay? Tell somebody to tell somebody that now is the time to get on. I am even taking the moment to share the broadcast myself because I'm very excited about my guest today. I believe there is definitely something that we will be able to receive from this guest. And you know, when we talk about loving beyond the walls and learning to overcome adversity, this individual has definitely overcome adversity. So go ahead, share, tell everybody we are live now. Tune in. If you miss us live and you happen to catch us on the replay, I want to say thank you for tuning into the replay and just welcome, welcome, welcome. So, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce you to my guest and bring her to the stage, Miss Lindy Boone-Michaelis. Hi, how are you? I can't really hear you. Let me make sure it's not my computer. Are you muted? Okay, now you're muted. No, I don't hear you anymore. I heard you just a moment ago. Technology, everybody, please just bear with us a moment while we get this fixed up so that you can hear Miss Lindy without any issues. Good morning, good morning, good morning to everyone. Yeah, I see that your lips are moving and everything seems to be going, but we can't quite hear you. How about this? Why don't you try to leave and then just double back, and we're gonna make sure we get it right. And I will just keep it going till you get back. Okay. Thank you so much, Lindy. Yes, I'm very excited to have Lindy here. She is a musician, a psalmist. She is a author. She has a wonderful organization called Ryan's Reach, which we are going to talk to you about here in just a minute. But to God be the glory. And so we just bind and rebuke the devil right now in the name of Jesus for anything he's trying to do with this broadcast to try to keep us from being able to connect. Literally, we were just in the green room and I was able to hear her with no problem. So adding her back to the stage, Lindy.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. See?
Yay.
Sometimes
Okay.
it just takes a refresh to go out
Mhm.
and come on back in the room. So thank you
Okay.
so much. I'm so grateful to have you on the show today. Very excited to interview you. So welcome, welcome.
Thank you. I'm just delighted that you want to talk to me. This is fun.
Yes. Lindy, I have your bio, but I love to give the individual an opportunity to introduce themselves because, you know, nobody's going to do it like you can. So why don't you
Okay.
tell the people who are listening a little bit about yourself?
Okay. Well, I think first and the way people would know me originally is I am from a well-known family. My dad is an entertainer and his name is Pat Boone. And so I grew up in Beverly Hills, California, as a member of the Pat Boone family. And so we did a lot of entertaining, a lot of singing because I'm one of four girls in the family. He had four daughters. And so we sang a lot together. And that way he could keep us close by when he was traveling and we were all becoming teenagers. He put us in the act. So we did a lot of that. And that was the beginning of my life. Then we all went our separate ways, got married, started having a whole bunch of kids. And I have three. I have Ryan, Jessica, and Tyler. And Ryan is my oldest. And I really had a very charmed life until a tragedy happened. And that was when I was on a vacation with my husband and son, and I got a call from my sister, Debbie. and she was searching for me. We were in Spain, and she had to find us on our vacation and let me know that my son Ryan had fallen through a skylight when he was 24 years old, prime of life, getting ready to start his career, engaged to be married. And he fell 3 stories and he incurred a traumatic brain injury. And so this was 24 years ago, and he was 24 years old when this happened. So I kind of have this calendar date of June 19th, 2001, where I kind of measure everything before that date and since that date, because it rocked our world and it changed so much. And so I was thrust into the world of traumatic brain injury,
Mm-hmm.
and had never had to suffer like that. I'd never experienced grief and suffering. Um, so eventually, I've gone through a lot of grief, but a lot of transformation because of it. And eventually, we realized that we were supposed to reach out and help others in the TBI community. And we
Mm-hmm.
started a nonprofit called Ryan's Reach.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much you want me to go before you ask me other
Yeah.
details, but
That was great. I appreciate you giving us that insight, and I'm very sorry to hear about what happened to your son, but glad that you were able to find a silver lining in it and be able to do something positive. When they say God doesn't put more on us than we can bear, sometimes it's like, are you sure, Lord, that
yeah,
I can
oh,
bear this? Um,
yes.
but but he really does work everything together for the good of his glory. So I'm glad to hear. Now, I want to learn more about this. Um, so, just before we dive into like the premise of Love Beyond the Walls, I want to understand, for those who may be watching that don't know what a traumatic brain injury is, can you kind of give a definition or help us understand what is a traumatic brain injury?
Well, typically it involves some sort of an accident that could be a fall or a car accident where your brain is injured. There are acquired brain injuries. There are brain injuries that happen early in life. But what I'm talking about is his brain was functioning perfectly well when he fell through the skylight, and he hit cement. I mean, it was a 3-story fall. There was a skylight on the roof, and it wasn't just a 1-story fall. It was a 3-story building, and it was an atrium area. So he hit a couple of railings on the way down on the different floors and ended up on concrete. So his brain basically had a global injury to his brain, because his brain kind of ricocheted inside the skull, injuring different areas, and
Mhm.
he wasn't expected to live. We know many people that have had brain injuries due to car accidents, of course, and then really freak accidents, uh, just anything that can impact your brain with
Mhm.
force against anything.
Yeah.
And then drug overdoses and things that can deprive the brain of oxygen, and that is considered also a traumatic brain injury.
Mhm. Mhm. I also understand things like strokes can cause
Strokes,
trauma.
acts, yeah,
Yep, to the brain.
right.
So how have you and your family been able to use your faith to kind of overcome everything that you've been through?
Well, we were raised as Christians. My folks were devout Christians, and they raised us in church. And so I think what is helpful, I mean, we were in church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday nights, and this is in Beverly Hills in an entertainment community. So I think we kind of were a little bit unique in that area. But my folks came from Nashville originally. They met there, and they um, went to high school. They were high school sweethearts, and they were raised with that Christian setting. And so we were learning the Bible from a very young age, and praying, having devotionals every breakfast, having prayer time at every bedtime. So we had a grounding, which I'm grateful for. Um, I went to Christian college. I just always in a Bible study. I do know that that was helpful because you have this knowledge of verses and you learn, but it really isn't until it's tested that
Mm,
you start to appropriate your own belief as your own and not your parents or even the people at church or your pastor. Um, it takes that kind of experience of either suffering, pain that causes you to question, which is not a bad thing,
mhm,
and also gives. I was glad to have so much scripture in me already to be able to recall and it start to make sense in the moment of my pain and in the moment of my suffering. Ryan was my first child. I basically didn't see myself as anything uh, as a career person. I sang, I entertained, I taught fitness classes, and I was home that way to be a mom most of the time. And Ryan was about to get married. He was already out of the house, but still, my greatest role is that of mother. And I couldn't imagine anything more painful than to lose a child or to watch your child suffer. He didn't die. He was in a coma for 4 months, which is actually hard to know. A lot of people think you just wake up from a coma. And in
mm,
many cases, you emerge from a coma, and it can be a very, very slow emerging. So when I got back from Spain, I walked into a hospital room and I just saw Ryan um, hooked up to every kind of machine in the ICU at UCLA. And he was being kept alive by all these artificial machines. And doctors really couldn't tell me what the outcome that they could expect because every brain injury is different and
mhm,
people's bodies respond differently. And so we relied as a family on our prayer. We just kept vigil for weeks and weeks while Ryan was in the ICU.
mm,
And honestly, the journey continues.
mhm,
Um, we've hit milestones, and he's not in a coma anymore, and he's recovered the ability to speak and to eat. And this took years, not
mm,
months. So I always go back and I can count, oh my goodness, the first time we knew he was responding to any external stimulus is he opened his mouth for a little bit of chocolate pudding on my daughter's pinky, and he just opened his mouth and licked the pudding and swallowed, and that was 3 months into the coma. But he wasn't out of a coma. That was still in a coma. And the first time he moved his mouth to say something, it was like 7 months into it, but no voice, just one word's mouthing. I saw his first smile after 10 months. I didn't hear his voice for 15 months. So it it kept moving forward, but at a snail's pace.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's a journey with TBI, and some people just wake up and just start talking. So it can be something quick, but in our
yeah,
case, it was more like a marathon. And then there's a few steps forward and then one step back.
mhm,
So after making some progress, all of a sudden you might have another issue like seizures start happening, or you have to deal with that. So it's been not just a straight line of improvement, but just a roller coaster. That's how it is. And it's
yeah,
different for everybody. You talked about asking God, or that the Bible says He will never give you more than you can bear. Um, I remember being kind of curled up in a fetal position and
mhm,
being to my mother, I know that, but I don't think I can bear this. This is
right,
so much.
right,
And she sweetly just laid her hands on me and continued to pray for me, prayed me through that.
yeah, yeah, and listen, I think that that's the humanity of us, right? To
Yeah.
say that, even though he said it, Lord, this 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 just feels completely unbearable. And the scripture also reminds us that our his power is made perfect in our weakness. Um, And
Hmm.
so, when we think about the fact that his power is made perfect in our weakness, how do you feel like your experience influenced how you see God now?
Well, I knew enough to run towards him, not away. I knew that he was my best ally. I did question it, but it didn't last. It's really like doctors aren't there to help. Uh, when I say that, I mean they couldn't tell me what was going to happen. They actually offered us the option of unplugging Ryan from all the machines, that he had a severe enough brain injury that they thought he might be on these machines forever and we could unplug him. And so when you reach the limits of what doctors can do, um,
Hmm.
then you have to rely on the Lord. And I knew enough to do that in a humble heart. And that's when new lessons start to reveal themselves. And that's when it becomes your own faith. And you start to recognize, oh, he showed up this way. Oh, he showed up that way. Not necessarily the big miracle I was praying for, but lots of little miracles along the way. And
Hmm.
really the miracle of my own transformation, learning in this suffering to sit in his presence. And I often just describe it as the ability to crawl up in the lap of God and just feel his calm heartbeat. That's
Hmm.
what I ran to, because my heart was racing all the time. There was just a trauma of wondering what is going to happen next time the phone rings. There were a few different times the phone rang in the middle of the night and it wasn't good news. So you go through those things and you start to brace yourself. And I learned that I could be quiet in God's presence and feel that there's nothing really to fear. And that was my practice. My practice
Hmm.
was fear not,
Yeah.
not because it's going to rise up in you. And I just learned to calm and sit and listen, not so much praying all the words, but being silent and letting
Yeah.
God talk to me and minister to me in that grief.
Yeah.
And I ended up writing a book because I kept notes in a journal for a while. It just seemed like that's how I could also deal with the pain and the suffering, was to write. And I was
Mhm.
never a journaler, but I felt compelled I needed to write things down. And there would just be simple things where I just felt God telling me to make a list of everything to be grateful for, which seems counterintuitive when you're spending your days in the hospital and not knowing where it's going to take you. But it was such a good thing, and I recommend it to anybody. There's always something to be grateful for. And the
Mhm.
list was short at the beginning. I was glad that Ryan had his roommate with him, and his roommate was able to call 911. So I wrote that down. And I was so grateful that actually, after a while, I was grateful that I was all the way in Spain, because I needed those 24 hours to wrap my head around what I was walking into and to have my first conversation with the Lord on that plane going across the Atlantic, and just writing out all my prayers, my thoughts, my fear. It was, Lord, don't let this pain be for no reason. And I think writing that down was really important. I can point back to it and know
Mhm.
that that prayer has been so heard by God. There's been so many beautiful things that have happened since that horrible day. And sometimes pain is what really lets the unimportant fall away, and you focus in on everything that is most important and most eternal.
Yeah. Yeah, that is very, very true. And I just appreciate your openness, your willing to share and to, to talk about these different things. I told you as we were preparing, the Bible says that we overcome by the word of our testimony and the blood of the Lamb. And, I don't know who this is specifically going to help, but I know that it is going to help somebody to be able to hear all that you have endured and to be able to see you still smiling and being able to show up, because that matters. And I do grief counseling for families of
Mm,
homicide victims in the city of Philadelphia. But I often tell people that, grief isn't just the feeling that you feel when you lose someone to death, but you can grieve someone who's still living. You can grieve the loss of a job. People grieve their pets, right? Grief is
yeah.
just that emotion that you feel when you have to recalibrate what you thought life was going to be like, and you realize that the plan or the idea or your expectation has now been uprooted and now it's different. You're gonna grieve that thing, right? And so, I hear everything that you're sharing, and I can see, like, there's so many walls that could be associated with that, right? Love Beyond the Walls is all about um, teaching people how to overcome mental walls, emotional walls, spiritual walls, and sometimes even physical walls. And these walls can be things that we erect in our own lives to protect ourselves, or it can be um, other barriers and things. Maybe sometimes it's things God puts in place to protect us, what have you. But can you talk to me a little bit about, what does it mean to you to love beyond the walls?
Well, definitely, I felt that the experience of my own wounding um, touched a lot of people, and we were given a platform to talk about what was going on while it was going on. And that's because I don't know if you ever watched Larry King Live when that program was on. It was on every night on CNN. And Larry asked my dad to come on the program and talk about what happened to Ryan and allow us to share our faith. And my dad asked if I wanted to go on the program too. And at first I thought, no, this is a private thing. And I felt like it was too exposing. And I felt like I was a raw wound. And I took time to think about it though. And then I realized, no, Ryan would want me to share our faith and how we are dealing with this through our faith and through our standing on uh, the faithfulness of God, really,
Mhm,
throughout. And
mhm,
so it was kind of Larry to invite us on and to let us share our faith. And it opened up prayer around the world because it was on all over the world. And my dad was a well-known figure. And as that happened, and we started to just get so many emails from so many people in many different countries praying for Ryan and caring about Ryan, that it just opened our hearts to want to do something for other people that were in our situation but didn't have a platform like we had.
mhm,
And so I think that one of the walls people might have is to be isolated from others when they're going through
mhm,
their pain. And I think that it was a wonderful opportunity to share. And I had my family around me, so I had a lot of support going through it. And I wasn't the only one hurting and suffering, but I am Ryan's mother, and I was probably the one most in agony at the time. But um, it just seemed like after about a year and a half, we should take what we've been through and reach out to the wider community going through traumatic brain injury. So at about a year and a half, we began Ryan's Reach. And that was another way of expanding from our situation into a wider situation. If
mhm.
that maybe is answering your question. In
Yeah.
prayer, I was asking, what can we call this nonprofit? And of course, I wanted it to have Ryan's name, but I thought, when I thought of Ryan's reach, I thought of him reaching his hand to his own family and to the Lord and to the medical community for his own recovery. But I could see Ryan reaching his other hand out and bringing as many other people with him as possible on this
Mm-hmm.
journey of recovery. And so we started Ryan's Reach, and we started raising money and appropriating money so that others could get therapy. Ryan received a settlement and he has all of his needs met. And so we've been able to take the time, because he has caregivers, we could take the time to do this, to raise money and make therapy available for other people. And that was part of their healing, but it was also part of our healing, to be able to
Mm-hmm.
take something as unwanted as a traumatic brain injury, but say, we're not the only ones going through it.
Right.
There's an awful lot of people that are going through this very thing. And so we've been able to raise money so that people could go to High Hopes Head Injury Program, where there's a day program for therapy. And Ryan benefits from that therapy himself, but he doesn't receive any of the money we raise. My husband is always careful to say, make sure you make that statement. We are not raising money for Ryan because he's well cared for, but we do help other people. And then eventually we started 2 group homes for people with traumatic brain injury, because it was such a blessing for Ryan to be able to live with us in our home. But there are many people who can't take care of their loved one themselves
Mm-hmm.
in their home. So we wanted to create a home setting, and we've been able to start a group home in Tustin, California, and one in Santa Ana. They're full right now. We have 9 residents between the 2 homes, but they're cared for with caregivers, and then we kind of go over and above the care, because they're all with brain injury, so we kind of focus on the brain injury aspect.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also been a blessing and part of our healing, to extend beyond um, what we've gone through, because life felt like it was very expansive on June 18th, 2001, and it got very small on June 19th, 2001. And we were spending all of our time in hospitals. He was in 6 facilities over 10 months, and then he moved home with us. And it felt like, okay, I guess the rest of my life could be within these walls of my house. That
Mm-hmm.
all the traveling and all the singing, or just my own life, teaching fitness classes, I felt like that it's all going to have to come to a stop, and we're just going to have to take it day by day and take care of my son. But that isn't what happened. God has been so faithful to provide help for us. And in turn, with the free time that we have, since we have caregivers, we've been able to dedicate 20 some years. It's been over 20 years since we started Ryan's Reach. And it's been a great blessing.
Wonderful. I love that. All of those things are so valuable, like being able to use this and now turn around and be a blessing to others. I just, want to say congratulations on being able to do that, because I think that's the stuff that brings God glory, right? It is painful to have to endure hardship, but when we're able to take that thing that brought us pain and use it in a way that brings God's glory, I mean, there's really nothing better than that, right? And I think even Ryan's Reach is a way to demonstrate God's love beyond the walls,
Mhm.
being able to love people who are dealing with these traumatic brain injuries, being able to show them God's compassion,
Mhm.
being able to empathize, or even in your case, sympathize with the families of those who are caring for individuals who are dealing with TBIs. I mean, that at the end of the day is what it's all about. It's how can I take what I've been through and show the love of God in my community, with the context of my experience. Um, and I have not dealt with individuals with TBI. That's not my testimony, but I've dealt
Mhm.
with other types of things. Like, so
Mhm.
for me, I dealt with the incarceration of my husband, and
Mhm.
Love Beyond the Walls. This
Yeah.
platform was actually birthed out of that, where I took my experience and I was like, okay, God, what am I going to do with this? And now here I am with this platform that's talking about loving beyond the walls. And all of us, we all have our own testimonies, our own walls, our own challenges and things that we face. But at the end of the day, are we going to continue to move forward the message of God's love? Are we going to trust God? Are we going
Mhm.
to lean into his faithfulness and allow him to use our experiences? And even though it's hard, because it requires vulnerability, right? Sometimes,
Mhm.
like we were talking about earlier, with going on Larry Reed Live, how you felt like it was a private matter, like these things feel private,
Mhm.
but sometimes when we hide our situations, it limits what God is able to do through our situation because, again, like I said, we overcome by sharing. There's so many other people who are dealing with the same things or similar things that we are dealing with, and they just need to know you're not alone.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I ended up writing a book that came out in 2013 called Heaven Hears. I wanted to
Mhm.
share the journey. And basically, I wanted to call the book, I Don't Want You to Be Alone. And the publishers thought, no, that's too long of a title. And they said, you got to have something shorter. So I came up with Heaven Hears. And it's not that you have to gather worldwide prayer, because that's an unusual thing to be able to get everybody around the world to pray. I believe
Mhm.
heaven heard the crash of the skylight and heard Ryan's labored breathing and heard the sirens of the ambulance, and was
Yes.
so present even before I even knew to pray, before anybody knew to pray. Heaven
Mhm.
hears. And so I ended up being able to write our experience, which is just our experience, but I hope that it has encouraged people and it can still be um, found. I think Amazon still has some copies. It's been a
Mhm.
while. But then also a very sweet thing happened where I had always sung with my family, loved performing with my family. I even joined another singing group in my 30s into my 40s. So music has always been a part of my life, but I'd never written a song. And during COVID, my daughter gave me a gift for Mother's Day. And she said, Mom, I can't go shopping at the mall right now, but I bought you an experience on Zoom. And it's an experience. She made an appointment for me to write a song with a Nashville musician. And I thought, what a creative idea for a gift for Mother's Day. But when she left, I just said to my husband, I don't write songs. I don't know how to write a song. What am I going to do on this appointment? And in my prayer time, actually, that appointment was coming up. And I said, Lord, can you just give me a thought, an idea, so I can contribute something to this? And I was reminded that I had made up a password that I needed during the book writing time. And I had, the password was word layer. And it was just one word. I combined word and layer together. And I said, that's a good title, word layer. And let me write down a few notes so that I could um, explain what I meant by word layer. And it came out as lyric. And all of a sudden, I gave the lyric and the title to the musician, a sweet gal named Ann Buckle. And she said, Lindy, I'm not going to change your words. The words are finished. I will write the melody. And that turned into a song that I got to record in Nashville with my sisters, Word Layer. And it is about the power of our words. And what
Mm.
we've been talking about here, it's explained, that that it's so important what we say in these moments. We're laying the foundation of our future with our words, and it's not magic. It's just our energy and our frequency is laid out before us. And so my message is really to just mind what you say and speak intentionally, and then be patient. It's like planting seeds, and sometimes you have to wait for things to grow. But what are
Mhm.
you planting with your words? So I hope people will look that up. It's out there on Spotify. But then after that, I was able to write another song more recently, and it's really a Ryan's Reach song, and it's called It's Not a Wasted Life. And I wrote that from my very personal experience, but it is supposed to really speak to anybody going through the grief, the pain, the suffering. And what lyric I want to share with you right now is in the middle of the song, is that though your heart will break, there's a difference you can make. When it's broken, it can open and puts compassion into motion. And life comes from the wound, and from the pain flows something new. With tears, we see a little clearer, and to the hurting, we draw nearer. And those lyrics say so much more than I can say in a podcast. I just feel like it's just that's the crux of what I want to share.
Yeah. Those are really beautiful words, and thank you for sharing your music with us. Definitely something I'm going to go check out when we get off of this time together. But I think, music is another one of the ways that we can learn to express ourselves when we don't have the words to say in this kind of forum. I find even like sometimes humming just as a
Yeah.
as a artist myself, I totally know what you mean. Like music inspired by our experiences, I think is the most powerful music that we can write. And I'm just so grateful for this opportunity to interview you because even when you were talking about your book, Heaven Hears, you know, you hit the nail on the head. Like before you even knew what happened to your son Ryan, God knew. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Like God knew what he was going to do. God knew how he was going to bring him over. God knew, how long it was going to take the ambulance to get there. God
Mhm.
knew every detail of what was going to happen. And even as you were praying on the plane, God was giving you peace. He was working on your heart to prepare you for the experience. And I think a lot of times, we don't feel prepared for the things that we're entering into. And one of the things I'm learning now, I'm actually reading this book called The Emotionally Healthy Leader. It's by Peter Cesaro, and it talks about having the loving union with God, like slowing down. And we live in such a high
Mhm.
paced, fast life that we often do not take the time to slow down and sit long enough with God concerning our situations. So, whether it's something intense like this, or even something, maybe not as intense, maybe it's a smaller issue or a smaller decision or whatever. We have to really learn how to slow down
Yeah.
because I'm gonna be honest with you. If I had been on the other end, panic is a real thing.
Yeah. Right.
Fear and panic is a very real thing.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you were able to find the grace of God even in the fact that you weren't local, because as a mom, I have two daughters, one who's 21 and one who's 14. Um, and sometimes I get that like separation anxiety where I feel like I've
Yeah.
got to always be near because they're my babies. I want to
Yeah.
protect them. I want to make sure that they're okay. If something happens, I want to make sure that I can get to them quickly. And but learning how to slow down and remember these are God's children. Before
Yeah.
they were mine, they belong to Him.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Gosh, I had something on my mind I wanted to share with you, but it's okay.
all
Yeah, that's what happens. I'm having a big birthday, big milestone birthday coming up. Thinking,
right.
okay, my concentration.
It's all
But
right. Well, congratulations. That's why I always keep a piece of paper nearby because I will forget as well.
yeah,
But if
well,
it comes up to it,
yeah, the unhurried part. I definitely wanted to relate to that because we do pack so much into our lives, and I'm really in the process of looking to have things. I'm having less simplify is what I'm trying to say. Trying to
mhm,
simplify, slow down, and realize that it's God and I are in this together, and I
mhm,
give as much energy as I can to my day. Um, but if I start to get overwhelmed, I'm not my best. And so I
mhm,
have to learn that if I'm going to give my best, I need to have some room to unwind and not pack so much into every day. I'm kind of guilty of that. I take after my dad that way. And, but to be able to have some moments where an interruption is welcome. I just pray in the mornings, feel free to interrupt my day, Lord, with an important phone call or an important encounter so that we can be present enough to know, okay, this is more important than that, and take that time and to recharge your battery so you don't get too tired. These are things that I think in our society, it's just too overwhelming with our phones and our every way that the world comes and into our brains. We need to have time to just sit and be quiet and reflect, and that means not being as busy as we are.
mhm. Yeah, I 100% agree. With the sitting and what I find, I feel like a lot of times people don't want to sit themselves.
Hmm.
Sometimes it can be a difficult thing to self-reflect and sit with yourself. So, what would you say to that person who maybe feels like, I don't want to sit with myself, so it's just easier to do other stuff? What would you say to them to encourage them?
Start small. Start small and carve out a time that you can either do a short devotional reading and then just be in silence and try to find a place that is a nurturing environment. Um, and I just moved. In my other house, I had a room that I really loved and a high back chair that I could curl up in, and I just loved that cozy environment. Now I'm sitting out looking at some water out through my window, and I'm so blessed because it's just a beautiful calm out my window. Flowers, hummingbirds. And I start to feel just the delight in nature, but I see God there, and I'm not necessarily praying a prayer in that moment. Sometimes I'm just breathing it in and taking in the love of God and just feeling the reciprocal love of God. In fact, I'm going to share something I look at every day, and I love this picture. This is my son and his little baby, and
Oh,
I keep this picture because of the way their eyes are locked in on each other. And there's not even vocabulary with this little guy yet, but he is in total engagement with this big entity looking at him with love and delight. And that's the way I see my relationship with God right now. I just want to look at God and know He's looking at me and we're smiling at each other. And I can sit in that and get lost in that. And I think that you have to find quiet time to be able to do that. And it is going to nurture your soul. And you can do that. It doesn't cost a thing.
Yeah,
but just gives you that wonderful knowing that he's got you, you've got him, and all the noise is shut out. Does that make sense?
it does. It does. And I love that. That is so, imagery is very important to me. I think, there's all different types of learners, but for those who are the
Visual.
use of images, visual or imaginative, I think that that's such a brilliant, way to display how, and that's how God wants us to come to him anyway, right? He said, come
Yeah,
childlike, right? With those big, wondrous, gazing eyes, just to,
yeah,
see and to know him and to be in awe of him and just the excitement of what's to come. And, even as you get to know him, it's like, we see that moment in time, but I can only imagine, how that baby brightens up when your son comes walking into the room. He hasn't been there for a while, and it's true, right? We think God's not around, God's not concerned about
yeah,
me. And then here he comes walking in, it's like, God, like, yes.
yeah. So it for me, it's an image that's always available to me. That not only is he present, but he delights in me, and I delight in him. And
Yes.
that's how we can really be present to other people when we fill ourselves up with that and
Mm-hmm.
go out into the world. We're able to offer that. And so that's another thing that I want to say to people listening is that first, let God meet you in your situation, and then take that and offer it, whether it's doesn't have to be a sermon. We don't have to all be up in a pulpit preaching, but we can offer that just every one of us in our interactions throughout the day with
Mm-hmm.
people to offer them a peaceful presence with what they're
Yeah.
going through.
Yep. 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 We're
Mhm.
supposed to be the light of the world. And I agree with you. I say it all the time, whether it's in the pulpit or in the grocery store or the bank or at a
Mhm.
stoplight, just there's little things that we can do. I'm taking a phone call, when God puts somebody on your heart, being able to pray for them, and call them and just, hey, I was just thinking about you. So many ways that we can show the love of God outside of the four walls of the church, beyond our own fears, beyond our own inhibitions, beyond our own trauma and pain. We can exude God's love. And I just think that, one of the things I say all the time is Jesus did not come to the earth, die, be brutal, beaten, die, and be raised for us to just keep on walking around living in brokenness. There is
Mhm.
healing in the presence of God. There is
Mhm.
safety in the presence of God. And no matter what we go through, no matter what, walls and things that we face, God's love will cover us, it will keep us. The Bible says love covers a multitude of sins. And just love, 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 love. The greatest
Mhm.
commandment, he said, is to love the Lord your God and to love your neighbor as yourself. And so, you know,
That's
just
it.
loving. Go
Yes.
ahead.
My favorite verse that I always signed my book with is John 16:33. In this world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer, for I have overcome the world. And that's going to look different for everybody, but it is an overcoming, and that is my
Yeah,
expectation. And it
yeah,
can be everybody's expectation that this is something that will be overcome. And that's the miracle. Ryan, let me just tell you, Ryan is still in a wheelchair and he has caregivers 24/7, but he is in the presence of God at all times. He's in the present moment. He doesn't have a short-term memory. He can remember from before his accident, and then anything that happens just immediately, he forgets it. And I thought that was going to be such a terrible thing. But over time, I've just begun to see that as such a blessing for him because he doesn't feel the loss. He is in the present moment. When I ask him, how is he doing? He doesn't remember how old he is. He's really quite unaware of how much time has passed. But in this moment, he says, I'm blessed. And I know that he truly feels like he is good with God. He has wonderful family. He has a roof over his head. He has food. And he just really is grateful for every blessing. And so that has been such a comfort to me. And I thought, I need to be more like Ryan. I need to be
Mhm.
in the present moment and not worrying about what's going to happen or being sad about what has happened, but how am I right now? And am I being taken care of? And the answer is yes, he's got me. He's got all my loved ones.
Yes, that's so beautiful. Okay, well, I thank you so much, Lindy, for being here with us on today. As we prepare to kind of wrap up the show this week, is there any kind of final thoughts that you would like to share with people, whether it's on loving beyond the walls or just having enough faith to overcome? Anything on your heart that you just feel like you want to share that you didn't already get to share with us?
I just would repeat, be mindful of your words, speak life, speak beauty into your future, and wait and watch what God will and can do in your life and be open to the transformation.
Mhm.
Pain and suffering can put you in a cell of isolation or it can transform you. And I just look at these instances of brokenness and just offer them like the loaves and fishes, saying, I don't have much, but you can take this and use it, and God can use it in big ways. And I believe that that's what he's done in Ryan's life. Ryan believed God was going to use him in a big way, and he is. And it's not always going to look like what we thought it was going to look like. Be open to that. Be open, because this life isn't all there is. This is a training ground for us to love God and love others. And there's always opportunity to do that, no matter which way your life turns. Love God and love each other.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much again for being here, Lindy. I want to make sure we run through because I know we've talked a little bit about different things, but I want to make sure we can reiterate your book, your music, where they can find you, Ryan's Reach, and I'm going to put those banners up so people can screenshot them or write them down. But
Thank
yeah, let people know how they can follow you.
Yeah, just going to ryansreach.com, and I'm on Facebook. Facebook, the music is Lindy Boone. I use Boone as my maiden name there, and Lindy Boone Music on Instagram. And those are the best ways to follow what's going on.
Awesome. If you want to get the book Heaven Hears, it's by Tyndale. You can look for it on Amazon, Kindle, and Audible. And then you mentioned your two songs, Word Layers, and it is
Okay,
not
word layer is just one word.
okay.
So, yeah, it's word layer, WORDLAYER. We're word
Perfect.
layers, like brick layers. Yeah,
Word
word layer.
Layer, and it is not a wasted life. Both
That's
of those
it.
can be found on Spotify.
Yes, absolutely. Wherever you can stream
Awesome.
your music. Yes.
Awesome. So again, everybody, I just want to encourage you to, stay connected with Lindy. You can connect with Ryan's Reach. You connect with her on her Instagram to get more of her music. Connect on Facebook. Go get the book because Heaven Here sounds like a wonderful book. And listen, music. Connect with the music. Um,
Yes.
I would also say pray because I imagine prayer. There's never too much prayer. So we will continue
Absolutely.
to lift you and your family up in prayer,
Thank
and just that God would just continue to make His face shine upon you to show you His grace, His mercy, His long suffering, and His faithfulness. And I think, there's a lot of good things about God, but one of my favorite things about him is his faithfulness to us. That even when we doubt, even when we waver, even, when humanity is doing what humanity does, God
Yes.
is continuously faithful to us. So thank you again so much, Lindy, for being on the show. It has been a pleasure to host you on today.
Nice to meet you, Nicole. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's show. I am so glad that you were able to be with us. I pray that you were blessed from the message and that you take something away from all that you've heard today. I want to encourage you to like, to subscribe, to share, turn on your alerts so that you can be tuned in. We will be back here next Saturday at 10 a.m. for another wonderful guest. I love you all with the love of the Lord. Have a good rest of your day.